Excellent. I think because of pressure of time, we may just jump straight into it because thank you again for coming. And as I said, because of pressure of time, we may need to just jump straight into it. And I'm very excited by the previous session. I think I've learned far more in that one session than I've done in a long time about how to expand beyond Africa. So, Carole, let me just start with you. Does an SME need to be registered to leverage the African Free Trade Area? What sort of support is there for the informal sector?
Okay, yes, SMEs are required to formally register their businesses and processes, and possess legal registration and operation licenses, as well as abide to all the tax obligations. And the registration is very crucial to obtaining the relevant export documentation, including certificate of origin and other requirements. However, we note that the informal sector drives much of the Africa's economy and cannot be ignored. So it's about 70% of the Africa economy is informal traders, and a lot of them are women. Some of the driving factors are the high tariffs that partner states and compliance costs. But with AfCFTA eliminating 90% of all tariffs, SMEs are better off operating through formal channels, which are more secure, but also because then even partners, stakeholders, government can be able to find them and support them better than when they cannot find them. And so the idea is to really get them more of them registered. So what we've been doing in KEPSA is really working with government to simplify the business registration processes through the one-stop shops, with Huduma centers and through online eCitizen. In addition, government is rolling out Biashara centers targeting SMEs across the country, while KRA is setting up micro and small division to deal with SMEs tax issues. We've also been really pushing government on a Biashara fund. You know, there are all these women fund, youth fund, but we felt that all these women fund and SME and youth fund all target mostly SMEs. And so having a Biashara fund that funds for business is best. And so finally, that has been approved, and Treasury is going to implement that. And so we're also training them on tax compliance and other business processes to enable them meet the regulatory requirements. Another option for informal sector is to organize themselves into cooperatives that can trade on their behalf and enhance their bargaining power.
Hi, Manasseh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so to my question, what can the Kenya Association of Manufacturers do to facilitate SMEs to take a full advantage of the African Free Trade Area? And then what can SMEs on this call? How can SMEs on this call benefit from the resources that the association has?
Thank you very much for your question. Kenya Association of Manufacturers has created an SME hub to specifically focus on the growth and development to facilitate growth and development of SMEs. And this we do by preparing and nurturing the SMEs to be able to access the African markets, first of all through customized capacity building programs and workshops, and providing practical, technical farm level interventions. So we provide these capacity building initiatives for SMEs to prepare them for the African market, because we know that for you to be able to export, be it regionally, continentally, you need product development, and this requires a lot of capacity building. It requires access to credit. It requires that you have quality products, and your products meet certain standards for exports. So we provide linkages with KIRDI, Kenya Institute of Industrial Training, Industrial Research and Development. We provide linkages with the Kenya Bureau of Standards so that they are able to capacity build SMEs on the areas of focus for them to be able to benefit fully from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So we also provide linkages with innovation and patenting. And to implement this, we have sector-specific programs. We know SMEs are diverse across sectors. So our programs are tailor-made for each sector. So in terms of accessing the continental markets, we push for policies and programs that can allow SMEs to access the continental market. We know that for the removal of tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers are important for access of continental markets for SMEs and all other businesses. So CAM is at the forefront of pushing for removal of non-tariff barriers for the manufacturers, specifically SMEs included. And we also push for the lowering of tariffs. As we speak, the AfCFTA is moving towards removal of tariffs at 90% for the non-sensitive commodities. So this will give our SMEs a competitive edge to be able to access the African market. It will also help the SMEs be able to access raw materials and strengthen their input supply, and also strengthen the value chains across the region. So I think in a nutshell, those are the key highlights of what CAM is doing. And of course, for you to on the question of accessing the continental market, we have CAM has been involved in the development of the online platforms that can give information on where there are opportunities. We have the Sokoku Africa, which is developed to help the SMEs access different markets, showcase their products, so that the other buyers from the other continents are able to access. So this, coupled with the removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers, I believe are key cornerstones of development of opportunities for SMEs. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. It seems like there's a fair bit of formalization of SMEs and the informal sector to enable them to access the African Free Trade Area. So, Treasure, I'd like to ask you, you as previously the Director for Trade at the EU Commission, and having been a strong advocate for Intra African Trade, what is the African Continental Free Trade Area, and why should we be all excited about it?
Thank you very much for inviting me and for your question. Indeed, the African Continental Free Trade Area is exciting because of its ambition, the scope, the design, and the strategy that has come out of the African Union. I think many citizens across the continent know the African Union works on various continental frameworks and strategies. But I think what makes this one different is basically the fact that it is one that is being fast-tracked and is moving into implementation, even as the rules are still being defined. So it is, I think it's it triggers the imagination, the size of this market in terms of the 1.3 billion Africans that are a part of it. Eventually, once all the countries have signed and ratified, of course, you know, we have 54 out of 55 countries already on board, and more are ratifying as we speak. I think the last count was 37 countries. So the political commitment, I think, is not the question. I think for what is really exciting is the opportunities that can be unlocked for Africans to trade with each other, to deepen the integration that has started with regional blocs, such as EAC and ECOWAS and other blocs. It is also important because it's more than just trading in goods. We are all very excited about, made in Africa, but made in Africa products and value chains require a lot of services and other actors that will basically make those products arrive to the consumer in the marketplace. So when we look at it, it involves trade in goods, a protocol on trade in services, investment protocol, an intellectual property rights protocol, competition policy, e-commerce, women and youth. So it is a broadening agenda, and in fact, it's being implemented in phases and negotiated in phases, so that we don't wait until the whole package is complete before we can start realizing the benefits. So I think the start of trading also happened from the 1st of January, and what we are seeing is that Africans across the continent are not interested to learn more. What does this rules system entail? What are these tariffs that are being dismantled? The rules of origin, how does that affect my business? So I see that it's also provoking a lot of stakeholders in the private sector and governments to go back and look again at their export strategies and how they can take advantage of this lucrative market. I was happy to hear the previous speakers talking about what Kenya is doing already to venture into that marketplace. And what I can say briefly is that what is important in this marketplace is basically providing the instruments and the practical modalities for trade to happen. And we're happy as the AeTrade Group that we're part of that. We're leveraging digital technologies to support how SMEs can expand this market. And I was so happy to hear my fellow panelists before talking about Sokoku. Sokoku is basically was named by the African Union as one of the Pan-African gateways that will allow it to be easier for SMEs to access this continental market. So I think more could be said about the AfCFTA, but in the interest of time, I will just stop there and say that it is really an open invitation for Africans to explore this market. And for us, as the AeTrade Group, we want to put emphasis on SMEs, women and youth to be beneficiaries, the key beneficiaries, because we have no doubt that the larger players have already positioned themselves and are likely to take advantage of the benefits that come with this market. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Okay, don't go because we've got more questions for you. But Wincate,
Very
good. A question. Now, we already have regional economic blocks. How do you think the Africa Free Trade Area will mean for these regional blocks, like the East African Community?
Okay, thank you very much for the floor, and thank you very much to the organizers for a much call to have the SMEs understanding what the free trade agreement brings to the table. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement was built on the foundations of the regional economic communities. So it does not mean that it is going to nullify or remove the regional economic communities. They are more or less part and parcel of it. So you think of it when you look at the agreement, how it is, you put the AfCFTA underlying, and then you have the regional economic communities, which have different levels of integration. Some have far integrated, for example, if you look at COMESA and SADC, and others have not such similar type of integration like as AMO. So the agreement is also not trying to bring the RECs all to the same level at once. It's acknowledging that those that already have the agreements, those that already have better integration can continue operating above the agreement, while the others now form the basis between themselves. So it now creates room to now put the RECs onto the next level, where we have the integration within the RECs as well as within the intra-REC engagement. So the 8 economic commissions that are actually recognized have now a meeting between the AfCFTA, the AfCFTA Secretariat, and the AU to have a framework on the integration that needs to take place between the different RECs, so that way we have a harmonization that comes across with the customs, with the payments, with the labor, and all these aspects. So it's not something that's going to be overturned in the next 1 year or two. It's a process in the making, all in all, to bring us to the vision that came with the Abuja Treaty of having a Pan-African economic and monetary union.
That's an excellent answer, and it does mean. One of my big concerns, I think, personally, is the fact that is a fear that others outside the continent will see the benefit far faster than we ourselves will. And so that brings me back to you, Carole. KEPSA is working to prepare SMEs for the African Free Trade Area. Can you share with us maybe things that you're already doing, maybe some success stories that you're already seeing, and how KEPSA is enabling SMEs in other practical ways to begin to make sure that we're up there, we're sort of the first taxi off the ranks to take advantage of this phenomenal opportunity.
Thank you. Just allow me to put off my camera just to have some stable net for now as I'm answering this. First, I think I needed to mention that of the reach of KEPSA. So, because we cover the whole spectrum from the multinationals to the medium, and to the small and startups, and then we are a federation of associations, including Kenya Association of Manufacturers and all those other associations, so that we have so that everyone can come together, and then whatever we're doing, we all agree and reach to all. If it's SMEs, then we are reaching all SMEs in all the different sectors, and not one sector. And so, in terms of what we are doing to prepare SMEs for AfCFTA, one of the data that we have is that according to the Central Bank of Kenya data, the value of exports to the continent in the first 3 months of 2021 was 70.2 billion Kenya shillings. That is 75% higher compared to the 65.3 billion in the first 3 months in 2020. The total value of exports to the continent in 2020 was 252.68 billion, a 9.07% growth compared to year 2019, and the highest in 8 years. This is despite the COVID-19 disruptions, indicating increased focus on the region and continental market. So with that data, we said, how do we then prepare SMEs to trade across the continent? One is the policy advocacy to ease the cost of doing business, especially during the COVID-19, improve business and competitiveness, and address regional trade barriers. Examples of policies engaged on include the SME policy, the startup bill, the credit guarantee scheme, the prompt payment policy for VAT refunds and pending bills, promoting Buy Kenya bills. We have partnered with Kenya Export and Promotion and Branding Agency to market made in Kenya products, and this includes SMEs. Because you know, a lot of the products that are made here are from SMEs, and so partnering with KEPSA is actually to market those products out of the country and into the region and continental. The second thing we've done is digitalization. So we've partnered with Trademark East Africa to implement an e-commerce booster program that aims to support at least 2,000 SMEs gain digital skills and build capacity to operate in the digital market space as they navigate the new COVID normal. We all know we're in the digital space, the tech revolution, and it will cut a lot of costs for SMEs, setting shop or traveling around the continent, so they can be able to do their business and trade seated in their own homes. The program has 3 components, targeting to onboard SMEs onto existing digital platforms, locally, overseas, e-market platforms, and strengthening the digital marketing capabilities of the SMEs. And what we're telling SMEs, being on the Facebook page, that is not e-commerce. There's more to e-commerce than just having a page on your Facebook. So far, over 2,600 SMEs have expressed interest in the program. And another program that we're doing is a Jira Digital project that aims to training and linking 2 million youth across Kenya to digital and digitally enabled work by 2022. And this is crucially for those seeking opportunities in the continent, including digital entrepreneurship. A total of 16,670 youth have already been linked to job opportunities in e-commerce, online work, digital marketing, and content creation. The third area that we are targeting for SMEs so they're ready for AfCFTA is financing opportunities. So through them, we have an SME resilience and recovery project by offering interest-free loans of up to 1.5 million shillings to SMEs repayable within 6 months. This has been crucial as they seek to diversify opportunities and markets in the wake of COVID-19. Our members, such as the banking industry players, ABSA, Equity Bank, Standard Chartered, among others, have also been providing SME targeted financing to enable them to scale up. The fourth thing is facilitating market linkages by organizing B2B forums for SMEs to market their products and also engage potential partners and investors. KEPSA is in the process of establishing an SME club that will be instrumental. We have had a sector, but we thought let's make it more like a club so that will facilitate a lot of these B2B engagements, networking and linkages among SMEs. We've also been conducting training and mentorship sessions for those who've been logging in on Friday morning We have an average of 400 to 500 SMEs from around the country and even in the region. The last country to join those mentorship programs was actually South Sudan. And these have we bring in experienced business leaders who provide insights on market and business intelligence and tell their stories, because every multinational started as an SME. Every medium organization we know today started as an SME, started as a startup. And so those stories are really, really inspiring to SMEs, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback to continue those. And we have other digital platforms that SMEs can access: the InfoTrade Kenya portal, the Africa Trade Observatory, an online. There's also the tradebarriers.africa online platform, which focuses on identifying and eliminating NTBs, and SMEs can visit the online platform and make their trade challenges known by reporting the NTBs they face. These are the non-tariff barriers. Then the Pan-Africa Payment and Settlement Platform by Africa Export-Import Bank, and one of the other banks that we are partnering with and we have an MOU with is AfriExim Bank, and a lot of focus is on SMEs for them to be able to access ACFTA. And so those are some of the things that we are doing to really prepare the SMEs for ACFTA.
Wow, that's incredible. In fact, I don't know if you could just maybe give us I'll probably we'll offer a sidebar conversation about all that information that you've given us. Maybe you can submit that to us.
Yes.
Can help us with that? Maybe you can have a copy of all that data. That's a lot, and it's amazing to hear all of this. Personally, I'm quite astounded that there's so much. I think it was yesterday one of the panelists said that part of our problem is we're just not conscious. We're not conscious of the opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's very well illustrated by your presentation. Now, Bwana Manasseh, let me ask you, how exactly does a soap maker, a bed maker, some fashion designer, how does your association help them sell their goods now?
Thank you very much for that question. We engage in seeking market access opportunities. We normally engage other countries in business-to-business forums. We organize trips to other countries to see the market opportunities that exist for our manufacturers. We normally also engage our external partners, embassies, to see, just to establish whether there are opportunities for their institutions on the Kenyan side, and whether there are also opportunities for Kenyan SMEs on the other side. So these are things we do through our CAM consulting agency in collaboration with the SME Hub, and we seek market access opportunities for these kind of businesses. Now, for the regular average SME, if they need to sell to a partner state in the CFTA, there are those online portals that provide information on existing market opportunities. They provide information on who is selling and who is seeking perhaps maybe inputs. So these are the kind of platforms that we sensitize our members on, and we encourage them to utilize these platforms to get information on where they can engage in business across the continent. And we also engage the financiers. We engage the financiers, financial service providers, to be able to provide credit opportunities for SMEs, because sometimes the quantities required of commodities across borders might not be attainable for the SMEs. So we also sensitize them on how to work together, issues like coming together as SMEs, and so that you're able to meet the volumes that are required by the importer, by your partner across the border, and then ensuring that the standards are uniform for whichever product you're selling. Because if you are coming together in order to meet the volumes, you need to have a standard commodity across the board so that there is consistency in whichever product you are producing. So we also influence the regulatory environment to encourage the exports. So we work a lot to reduce, working towards the reduction of cost of doing business, and also issues of ease of doing business. That is both locally and regionally and across the borders. So whenever issues arise of our members being having challenges with the cost of doing business, we normally seek the counsel of the State Department for Trade and find out how these issues can be resolved. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned the issue of standardization and quality control, because of course that's a pretty big one, I think, across the spectrum of SMEs. Now, to Treasure, you let's talk ICT and the African Free Trade Area. What are you doing in it and how would you define the role of ICT in this incredible space called African Free Trade Area?
Thank you. In fact, it is just one of the most critical enablers I think we have seen with this perfect storm of COVID-19, the start of trading of the AfCFTA, and digital technologies and digital transformation coming together. The role of ICTs are very important. And I think that what we are in fact, we're learning a lot from Kenya in terms of how ICTs can make a huge difference to people's lives. But what our entry point is as an organization is we are providing e-government services as well as e-commerce solutions to the marketplace. Because what we have understood is that countries across the continent are at varying stages of preparing for the best utilization of technologies to provide basic information and services to citizens. I was very, happy to see online that, Kenya, in terms of your customs procedures, you've gone paperless. Some countries are still at the early stages of thinking about this and planning. So our interest as the AeTrade Group is how can we accelerate and bring countries to move forward at a faster pace, obviously not together, but also learning from each other's experiences. And the whole aspect of the ease of doing business being facilitated by technology is a key part of what we are doing. And we do that through country programs that we are rolling out successively around the continent. And but the e-commerce space is actually probably the most exciting because it is speaking to a lot of the issues we're talking about today. Our research told us that across the continent, micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, there are 3 chronic issues we haven't been able to solve successfully up until now. One is the know-how to do business. What do I mean? Of course, people are trading on the continent every day, but the difference is that what we feel is needed is to change the mindset from doing kind of traditional survival business to a competitive business mindset. And so we have designed a program which is delivered online called Changing the Mindset, which basically prepares SMEs to move beyond just their comfort zone of their community or their city where they are trading to actually look further and look at opportunities across the border. And then that is the capacity building opportunities within Sokuku, because we call it a digital capacity building machine, that we can partner with various actors, including hopefully some of the stakeholders in this event, to look at how we can take digital content, put it on our AeLearn platform, and make it accessible across the continent. And we are working in 4 languages because of the African Union, but we obviously could expand further. We would love, for example, to see products in Kiswahili on our platform in the future. So the first aspect is the know-how to do business. The second is lack of access to affordable finance. All SMEs are challenged in this way at one stage or another on their journey. And so what we are basically providing is a vetting process through Sokoko, which will provide a complementary information and data that will support the application when an SME wants to approach a commercial financial institution for finance. And this is something we actually have understood we need to advocate for also at the policy fora. And this is why we are working with the stakeholders of private sector associations at the continental regional level, as well as the national level, where we, as much as possible, because that's where it really matters, to be able to see what we can do working with the ministers of finance, the central banks, development finance institutions, to really unlock this missing link. Because if you look at the experience of SMEs in terms of lending in Africa, it takes on average 6 weeks to 3 months for an application to be processed. I know that it could be faster in Kenya, but on the rest of the continent, this is the experience. And then after that, 50% of them may get approved. Whereas in India and China, it takes, an application is considered within hours. 5 to 6 hours, you have the response. So I know that we are moving forward in terms of digital technologies, but ICT needs the enabling regulatory framework for it to work. And so the aspect of policy advocacy and working with an ecosystem of actors to push in the same direction is extremely important. The third aspect of our work, so beyond financial inclusion, which we're very passionate about, it's the aspect of digital inclusion itself. We know that, half of the, mobile penetration is, has been really, has accelerated at a great pace on the continent. But what the information I have is that out of about 1.4 million cell phones, only half of them are smartphones, which means that the digital platforms we're talking about for B2B, for e-commerce trading, will not be accessible to a lot of people in the rural areas, people who need this access to markets to get out of COVID-19 challenges. So we are working on advocacy and finding solutions for the digital inclusion. And we have actually a product that we want to bring to market, which is a solar-powered laptop. And this, we think, is not a silver bullet, but it could make a major difference and a contribution to make it possible for more Africans to be online to trade together. So I will basically just end to say that it's the aspect of innovation that I think is exciting in the ICT space. And we see the youth as being very dynamic, and much has been said. And I think Kenya is one of the regional centers. We have Nigeria, South Africa, and other larger economies where we're seeing a lot of activity in terms of applications coming forward, venture capital finance being levied. But we think we need as a continent to do more, and we need to have this shared prosperity model. So what we are doing on a practical level is partnering with the African Union to prepare for the second Intra African Trade Fair in Kigali, where we, as AeTrade Group, are going to be managing a youth startup pavilion. And we have a global competition for youth startups that we're running, and we want to share this information with stakeholders so that at least 150 to 200 youth can access that space and be able to basically leapfrog and go to the next level in terms of expanding their business ideas or business operations across the continent. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. That's amazing. So to Wincate, let's talk about movement of labor. The African Free Trade Area has the protocol for the trade in services. And what do you think, what are your views around the question of both movement of labor and selling of services across the new frontier of the free trade area?
Yes, thank you. So this also ties in back to the discussion we were having earlier with regards to the regional economic communities, because this will tie into how that would happen. You're also looking at the language aspect, the cultural aspect. You're looking at the policies, you're looking at also the skill set and the research that is being done and the movement of those type of people across the continent. So the protocol on trade and services is to foster and create an open, rules-based, transparent, inclusive and integrated single services market in Africa. But we can all attest that because services is not something that is tangible, that can easily follow through, it's been a complicated negotiation. So the negotiation is not made on listing which type of services, because as has been highlighted with the previous speaker, with digitalization, e-commerce and everything, this is becoming broader and broader, the types of services that can be provided across the board. So they are more or less looking at the protocol from the way the service is exchanged. So there are 4 particular modes that they look at. So the first one is from the territory of one member to another member. So that could be cross-border supply. The other, or the second point, would be in the territory of one member state to the service consumer of another member. So that could be consumption. So that is an example with applications. It could be based in Kenya, but then it's being used all across East Africa. Then the other is by a service supplier from one member through commercial presence in territory of another member. So this is commercial presence, again, similar to what I gave before. And the last mode is by a service supplier of one member through the presence of natural persons or members in the territory of another member. So this is where you asked about the movement of people. So if, for example, you have a surgeon coming in from Egypt, going to perform surgery in Ghana, does their license still be accepted in Ghana, and what duration of time do they spend there to be considered like being given like those types of visas? And this also cuts across to what you're seeing with the AU putting across the African passport that will make it much easier for us to move across boundaries without having to have the issue of visas. If you look internally, it's not easy to travel within the different African countries. So we are seeing different regional communities already pushing for that, or already advanced with that. For example, with the East Africa community, where you can even use your ID or passport to cut across. But not all recs are like that, and that is now a movement that is being pushed to have other economies do the same thing, and therefore make it easier to do intra-rec movement. One other thing that maybe I can highlight on that is also when it comes to the services is having an understanding, like having the representatives understand what we mean by the services sector, because it's the most underrepresented. In Africa, we only have 13%, and then the rest is 83% that we are exporting. So what needs to be done, particularly, for example, with chambers of commerce, with other stakeholders, to capacitate as well as push for the advocacy of the digitalization as well as the infrastructure. I'll give one example with telecommunications, because among the different services that are being negotiated right now, there are 5 priority areas, and that is transport, communications, tourism, financial, and business services. So this is, again, coming back to the complexity of trying to decide which ones are we going to negotiate. So they decided, let's go to these 5, and countries are doing on an offer basis. So they look at the positive increment to the economies. What are they missing in terms of services? And then they make that as an offer across the board, either to another country within the AfCFTA or to a region, whichever way. But it's pertinent for it to be transparent so that everybody knows that this is what the country is requesting for our services, and therefore when they put out their tariffs later in June, you're able to know which countries are requesting for what and which services can then be put out across the board. So for us, as Chambers of Commerce, we are trying to collect this information, particularly with Chambers of Commerce and Industry, working together with other different trade facilitators to enable the movement of people across, even the same with the goods, trying to make it easier with certificates of origin as well, to make it easier for people to not only move their goods, but also move themselves. And as representatives on the Pan-African table of negotiations, to be able to push together as well the governments to see that services need to be invested in, and this can also push forward the economic development of the continent. Thank you.
Wow, that sounds like a lot. I can imagine, of course, we live in an age of, given that we're living in the information age, the movement, the mobility of labor is actually an international phenomenon now. And maybe for another day, we'll have a conversation around how does the free trade area going to address the international mobility of labor. because I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation. But now, so in closing, can I just ask? I'll ask each of you panelists to just think of one word, maybe let's say 2 words that you'd like to say, or you'd like to characterize the future for SMEs under the African Free Trade area. So starting with Carole, think what are the 2 words you would think of that would say epitomizes the opportunity for SMEs in the free trade area? Just 2 words.
The opportunities are limitless.
Unlimited opportunities.
Unlimited opportunities.
Excellent. Manasseh, 2 words?
Yes. Mine might not be 2, but I think there'll be a lot of innovation, innovativeness in engaging in the AfCFTA.
Innovation, okay.
Yes.
To Treasure, 2 words to describe opportunities.
I would say transformational. Just 1 word.
Transformational. Just 1 word. That's very good. That's excellent. And Wincate?
Mine would say regional chains.
Say that again?
I'll say regional chains. That they don't think their supply, now that the market is open, just think within your country, but look at what else you can find within the region or even the whole continent and get your product out to the rest. Yeah.
Wow, excellent. Well, thank you very much, panel members. That was a really, really interesting one. I just got thinking that just from this conversation, I almost wish there was a monthly forum where all of you could come on board and you could ask questions like this, because clearly there's a huge need for knowledge for us to understand as SMEs what the opportunities are, and the fact that going forward, the rest of the world is not asleep. It's not sleeping. And now that you've created the largest free trade area on earth, we better get on to taking advantage of it and making sure that we benefit the most. Others, we may find ourselves again looking as others from other countries and other continents walk into our backyard and begin to take opportunities. So thank you very much. I'm extremely encouraged from everything I've heard in terms of the measures and things that we are doing to fix and to make sure that the African SME comes out on top. And so with that,
all right, thank you very much, Wahoro, and thank you so much to our guests. What a wealth of information. My word, Mr. Wahoro, would be emancipation. I think the opportunities that come from the free trade area is just emancipation. You know, I think it's about time Africa became decolonized economically. And I think this is a great way for us to get decolonized economically. So emancipate, in the words of a street philosopher that I value very much and listen to him a lot, he says, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And, I agree with that philosopher. Wincate, Carole.
You speak to my generation.
I'm speaking to your generation. I'm not too far back. Wincate, Carole, Manasseh, thank you so much, and Wahoro for this. Carole, I think the challenge to keep this information out there is yours. To the conversations around the free trade area with the SMEs, what you're doing every Friday. This is I think you have the opportunity to keep a conversation like this alive, and we're looking forward to you doing a lot more of that. But thank you for all the work you're doing with KEPSA. Thank you, Manasseh, for the work you're doing with the Association of Manufacturers, and Wincate with the Chambers of Commerce and Industry.